Hey there, Cat here. I'm the DM of the Endless Dungeon campaign from Dungeons & Dragons WeakKnights, and I'll just be explaining the rough premise and shit of the campaign. Just gonna spitball at you, because, well, we didn't decide to actually make this podcast till well into the campaign, so this will be a video to fill you in on what you missed. I guess, yeah. So, let's start off with the premise of the campaign. Premise of the campaign is that in this world there is a sort of magical bottomless dungeon that shows up every so often. On record in the world, it has shown up 3 times before, and what people know of it is that at the end of the dungeon, you get to make a wish of anything. Not just like a regular wish, like from a genie or a wish spell where it can fuck up. This one is from like a no holds bar, no rules wish. So that's and also you just get massive amounts of loot out of it from all the crazy treasure and shit that you get out of it. So that's a good thing. Yeah, that's why people do the dungeon. Sorry, just spitballing. Um, so yeah, that's the premise of the campaign, and the party is going to go do this dungeon. So yeah, the party that started off this campaign was Volum Lomid, the Dragonborn Barbarian, Dane Bronzebeard, the Dwarf Barbarian, Julian, the Half-Elf Cleric, and Pigeon, the Aarakocra Ranger. So yeah, that's a party. Yeah. Okay, so pretty much at the start of the campaign, Dane and Julian know each other prior. They had like a little bit of a meeting outside before they reached the town. The town in which the dungeon currently is called New Gateway. Lore-wise in the world, the first time the dungeon showed up was in a dwarven keep called Lakir Keep, and that was the first recorded incident of the dungeon. It disappeared several thousand, maybe just like 1,000, can't remember the exact dates. I made all this shit up off the top of my head. Like 1,000 years later, it showed up in a town. It showed up in like the middle of nowhere. They built a town around it because of all the like the lucrative shit, like all the crazy money that people make off it. They decided to make a town around it because it would flourish. The dungeon was beaten in a week, and it was the town of Gateway. The town failed because the dungeon was beaten in a week and disappeared after it was beaten. And this is the third recorded incident of the dungeon in New Gateway, shown back up again. It has been going for 2 years. Dane and Julian know each other prior, go to the dungeon, the town, New Gateway, they run the dungeon, and there they meet up with Volum and Pigeon. They meet them in town and decide to like hang out with them, make a party. They do a dungeon. They do like a bit of the dungeon. Pigeon has to take his leave because of shady underground dealings from his backstory, and by that I mean the player who played as Pigeon had like life to deal with, so he could not continue the campaign, so he was out. And shortly after, same thing happened to the player playing Julian, so it was just down to Dane and Volum. But before they left, they managed to buy out a rundown shop in town called Duke's Dungeon Gear. They bought it out, fixed it up, stocked it with things they have pulled from the dungeon, and they have renamed it Loot Locker. It's got like the Photoshop, and then like, yeah, photoshopped up the logo for Foot Locker, but with like a helmet and shit. Loot Locker. It's funny. Hey. So yeah, as DM, and I thought it would be kind of lame for it just to be 2 players, I went and searched for new players and got some other friends of mine to join in. And so the new campaign members. Oh, I start with campaign for that. New members of the party joined in. So you have Platypar Quackers, yeah, the Aarakocra Bard, and Ayet Dix. Ayeetdix. Ayet Dix. The Warforged Bard. So now our party is 2 barbarians and 2 bards. And as the DM, that is up to me to have to deal with that. Where half the party is trying to be the party face, and the other half is trying to smash everything. It's fun. So shenanigans ensue, they do more dungeon runs. Pretty much the way the dungeon works. It's not just you keep going down and eventually you have to haul ass back up. It's a collection of rooms, and you get special keys to open them. Depending on the design of the key and the design of the door, it combines to create a instance dungeon room. You do it, at the end of said dungeon room, you get a new key, and you repeat so on and so forth. Yeah. So eventually one of their keys led them to a mansion owned by one Lord Cook. Cook. Yeah, Cook. Kook. And it was sort of like a fancy dress gala kind of going on. The dungeon can lead to real places in the world. It's not all magically created by the dungeon. And there they discovered that Lord Cook was actually kidnapping his own guests one by one and turning them into pieces of art for his gallery. So the party thwarted his endeavor, murdered him, stole a magic amulet he had that controlled a skeleton butler that he had, so they now possess a skeleton butler named Jeeves. They saved a bunch of people from, like, it's a crazy dungeon that were going to be turned into art. And Dane stole a flask that had a ritual performed on it. They had stopped mid-ritual, but Dane took the flask. And later they discovered that the flask contains a genie! Not a good genie like can cast wishes, just a genie, because genies don't always have to cast wishes. He's just a dude. He's just an elemental dude stuck in a flask. He has amnesia. He doesn't know who he is. So he hangs around the shop. They left the flask at the shop. Jeeves works at the shop. They still have Duke, the previous owner. He works at the shop too. And then after that, let's see, there was a tournament. Tournament was neat. It was like sort of like a festival tournament for like end of the year. In the month, moving into the month of Smarch. Made up all this shit for this world. Made up shitty month names. So the tournament, during the tournament, Volem's opponent in the tournament exploded into bugs. Yeah. And that started a bit of intrigue to discover what happened. And there was a shady masked character dealing in bug eggs, claiming they would make competitors stronger, and he was trying to deal them out to people. So Volem tracked him down and made a deal with him. So Volem took some of the bug eggs and almost got killed by it. But the masked person was after a dungeon key, which was a prize at the tournament. And our party managed to get said key. Dane, good old barbarian dwarf, he fought a woman named Sasha, who was actually one of the people they saved from Lord Cook's manor. They had a fight. Dane won because he's a barbarian and he's OP as shit. But, they got to know each other. Long story short, currently as the campaign goes right now, Dane is like, going out with Sasha. Because, he's a dwarf and he pursued that. I don't know, if they want to do it, I'll let them do it. I'm the DM, I'll let them do it. If they want to pursue NPCs as waifus, let them. Let's see, what else from the tournament? They met Malcolm, a young mage at the Mages Institute, who now is sort of working with them at the shop. Like, he makes weird little magical trinkets for them to sell, and they usually go to him for any kind of magical needs. They got the key. They eventually had to relinquish said key to the masked individual because he really wanted it and was becoming quite a pain in the ass to get it from them, with a shady organization he's a part of, who, for lack of a better term, the shady individual with the mask who was messing with the tournament, his name was S. Each member of this organization only refers to themselves as a letter of the alphabet. They later encountered H, who was the one in charge of making those bugs, and M, who was a sniper of sorts with a rather large crossbow, who almost killed the party when they were trying to confront S. M was his backup, so S now possesses said key. went their separate ways. Also in this campaign there has been, still is, another adventuring party called the Iron Sentinels. And with the Iron Sentinels, they had a member named Michael, who had gotten lost in the dungeon. The first time they showed up in town, they learned that Michael was currently lost in the dungeon. He eventually came back out after more interactions with the Iron Sentinels and such. Our main party, as they went into another dungeon, they encountered a revenant, a revived corpse of Michael, and learned that Michael, when he got lost in the dungeon, had been murdered by a doppelganger, and the doppelganger had taken Michael's form, and that's what left the dungeon and has been mingling with everybody in town. So they led the Revenant out of the dungeon. Dramatic showdown between the Revenant and the doppelganger. Revenant won. Revenant proceeded then to dissolve into ash, for his vengeance had been complete. Michael is now dead, but with an open spot in the Iron Sentinels, Sasha, Dane's waifu, has moved into the Iron Sentinels. And that's their new member. Let's see, I got a little bit of notes here. I'm just spitballing off here. Arton. Assorted Arton encounters, yes. Throughout this campaign, there has been a drunk dwarf named Arton, who has done various things, such as the first thing they did when they got to town in this campaign, the first action in the campaign, was Dane beating the shit out of Arton, because Arton was at the arena looking for a fight, and Dane beat him up. Arton always just kind of shows up doing drunken comedy relief things. He's currently working at the Plucked Parrot bar to work off his bar tab. Yeah, I have that on my notes to mention Arton for some reason. More or less, throughout this campaign, there has been a bit of fourth wall breaking with the party. Whenever I mention something that they should know, they thank the Canadian in the sky. Because I'm Canadian, and they're just referring to that just as a joke. But I thought, why the hell not? And they said, why the hell not? So I made it an actual thing in the world they came across a minstrel inside the dungeon named Archie. And his voice sounded familiar to them, as I pointed out. And Dane was the one to pick up on it with a handy-dandy perception roll that Archie is the voice in the sky. And just as soon as they figured it out, Archie had just magically vanished. So that'll be something to pull on later. Yeah. So that's about it for the, the explanation of this campaign. That's what you missed. This is episode 0. You can move on to episode 1 now. Look forward to more shenanigans in Dungeons & Dragons. It's probably a lot more fluid with more people talking with me, so I'm not just spitballing, but whatever. Yeah.